Hey guys, so basically what I'm doing next is going to be doing the oil feed fittings, the heat shield, and the front offset engine mount bracket installation. So basically the first part's talking about you have to take off the plug that's on the cylinder side of it, and the front and rear cylinder head side, but it's on the flywheel side of the engine above the cylinder head exhaust ports. So basically, if you look, I think based off of the picture they're talking about this guy, which is above the exhaust port. It's on this side of the engine, and it looks very similar to what's shown in the picture here, where it has this thing sticking out right above it, which to me is this guy. So I think this port, and then there's an equivalent one on the other side that we got to take out first to then put in these fittings. It does tell you have to put a Honda bond on these threads. This basically you have to put it on this thread and on this thread as well, to seal it with Honda bond. So I think I could just use my Honda bond 4, and that will work as thread sealant. Don't put any sealant on this flared fitting according to their instructions. So it looks like it uses an 8mm. The factory plugs use an 8mm socket. So I'm gonna use that to break this free. Instructions does say that it has sealant on it, so it's gonna be a little tough to remove, which it wasn't too bad. And there's oil. Well, luckily I got a rag here. Should have thought about that there will be oil in the plug port. What to torque it to or anything, the instructions doesn't really say anything in regards to that, so I guess you just tighten it until it's snug, and then you're all set. So these fittings use 6mm hex inside of them. Okay, so then we can put some Honda bond on this thread. So now I need a I think it's a 11mm deep socket to tighten that fitting on. There you go. That feels good. And then you can use this to wipe the excess off. Let's use a new rag. That's one port done. Next we gotta do the other side. So you can kind of see how it looks there. Basically you have the adapter fitting and then the flared fitting to that. There's sealant on both, and then you just clean them up. And then I'll go on the other side, do the other side. Oh god. Alright, well, I got one issue already. This side is much closer to this, and it's not facing as down, so you definitely need a short, stubby, or an angle, like a basically what do you call it? An L key hex that fits that to be able to loosen it. Because as you can see, if I put this plus with the adapter that I need, actually I might be able to use my torque wrench to loosen that. Let me see. I mean, it is loosening. There you go. Yeah, alright. Now it's loose enough. I can do it by hand. It's good drip. So just be aware of that. I wonder if I can put a rag under it, directly under it, to just. Let's see if I can absorb some oil out of this hole so it stops pouring out. I'm gonna leave that rag there for a little bit. So next, is this little guy. So put some on the bond on the. So I got myself this type of ratcheting wrench. It'll definitely help. Let's see if I can position this. So, as you can see, it's a tight area, but I think using this, I'll be able to tighten this in place. So I'm just gonna wipe the excess off. So, oil pan with the oil drain fittings for the turbo going onto the engine block. Alright, so the instruction says we have to remove this heat shield because we're gonna replace it with like an upgraded one. So basically I'll have to take these off, which not sure why it wasn't part of the earlier section, but that's alright. Nope. So that's probably a 10mm. Let's see. Yep. I'm assuming it shouldn't be that tight, so. All right. I would think after I take this bolt out, the whole thing drops. Yeah. So the heat shield's off. Alright, so I'm gonna try to put this heat shield. There's one spot that's really hard to get to. I think if you basically preset it up like this, you should be able to start it with the tool. So, like this. Alright, so what I ended up doing, hopefully you can see, is I pre-installed the heat shield with the spacer behind the shield and the two 6x16 bolts on these two. The other end is loose over here, so what I'm going to try to do is get the spacer up and then the bolt in and started while it's being held up, because I don't see any other way of doing this in this tight area over here without this being supported somehow. So now I'll take this piece and this piece. Let's try to get this up here. Not sure how I'm going to do it, to be honest. Alright. I was able to do it. It's tough, but if you stick your arm above, you should be able to do that. Alright, so the heat shield's in. It shows it with like some what you call it, gold shielding, but they actually don't include that anymore. It's actually the heat sheet barrier shield sheet isn't pre-installed or supplied. Alright guys, so basically the next part of the instruction set tells you we have to locate the factory oil pressure switch wire harness that's on the right side of the rear bank, which I believe is this guy here, and then relocate it using this setup, and we also have to insulate it with this. So first thing is to take what looks like probably a 10 mil nut off, or bolt out, to loosen the clamp that's securing it in place. So this clamp kind of clips off. I'll put the old hardware with it, and then the rubber grommet that's on it, I'm assuming we're taking that off as well. And you can open that to remove this piece. And then I guess you could just keep this together. So next up, we have to put this on the Alright, so
This is kind of tough. I kind of couldn't get it to really stick properly while I was routing the cable in there. This is part of the engine harness. You can't really disconnect anything. So I don't really know what else I'm supposed to do to get this to properly secure itself, but I'm thinking with the clamp it'll hold it shut up here, and I'll just cut some of that insulation up there, and I think I'm all set with this. At least that's the best I can do. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to clamp this in. It looks like you need like a 10 mil ratcheting to get it from above or from the side, because you can't really get a socket on there. Alright, so the thing I got the clamp in, you gotta kind of pre-compress the clamp so it's as flat as possible, or else it's impossible to get thread engagement in that tight space. So you can't put a 10 millimeter small wrench. You can't tighten it with this. I don't really get what's the intent that they want you to tighten some clamp with that much space, and nothing around it for ability to, I don't know. But I will keep trying. Alright, so after some aggravation, I was able to get this kind of set up how they wanted it. I had to cut some of the length off towards the end. I don't really get why they made it longer than necessary, but and also it's a pain in the ass to try to put this foil tape on as it's curving. So I literally had to get some ducting tape or whatever to try to secure it together. So we'll see how that works, but that was pretty, in my opinion. Very hard to get to the hardware, very hard to get to this hose and work in this tight area, but whatever, it's done. So at least you'll be able to see what you got to deal with. It sucks. Alright, so next up is doing this engine mount. It goes up, basically goes up in this area like I had previously shown you guys. So it says that we're supposed to install a 10 millimeter yeah, I guess I don't really understand the point of that, but it says to put basically a 10 millimeter nut behind washer behind this hole, and then a spacer behind this one. So I think I'll start with this bolt first, reusing the factory ones.
which are 40 mil. So it should be a bit longer. Alright, so I think I have it correct. It says 10 millimeter washer here, then a spacer here. I mean, I don't understand. I mean, the picture could be better. Like, it's kind of hard to tell what's going on in that picture, except it's pointing at some dark locations for the top two bolts. So I'm assuming a 10 millimeter washer under that one bolt for some reason. So that's my takeaway from it. If it's wrong, we'll see, I guess, later on. I might have to fix that. But so now I'm just gonna torque it to 43 foot-pounds. All right, it's torqued. All right, so I think basically the next part is installing the turbo system, which is awesome. So I'm gonna stop it here, and we'll continue on in the next section. On, it looks like we have to put some fittings on the turbo itself, and maybe mess around with some studs.